topic of security as a whole. My goal is just to kind of orient you to some of the things that have occurred in the security space, make sure that we're all kind of framed up, if you will. So from that perspective, I thought I'd first start with a little bit of levity. So I apologize for the levity or any political overtones on this, none are intended, but simply want to point out some differences as to the world of 2006, okay, and the world of 2016. Okay. Selfies, right? The idea of selfies and the technology changes that have occurred along that route. Now, similarly, 2005, okay, vantage point. This is over here in the Vatican. Let's take a look at the same vantage point in 2013. What do you see? This is the part where we're interactive, right, and just kind of saying things out there. What do you see that are big differences in the technology changes that have occurred here? Cell phones, definitely part of it. What else? Tablets, form factors that we had not even seen and back in 2005.
Everybody's got one.
Everybody's got one, the ubiquity of it. Certainly, I think I see a flip phone over here down the bottom right. What else? Stuff you don't see. What are they doing? Video. Taking probably some 720p, 1080p video right now, creating some data. A lot of data being created in that screen, not so much on the left. What else? What are they doing with that data? Streaming it over some networks that didn't exist before. Pressure on my microphone. What else? What applications are they using?
Social media.
Social media. Yeah, they're sharing it real time. Are those corporate devices or are those their personal devices?
Both.
Maybe both.
Possibly both. Yeah, I think I saw your company's laptops or tablets right there. So they're streaming and using it for personal use, presumably, as the Pope is being introduced in 2005 and in 2013. Okay, so same vantage point. So a lot of technology changes, and just kind of get your mind setting. We didn't have these applications. We didn't have some of these networks, these devices, these operating systems, right? The operating systems here are iOS, Android, not seeing a lot of Windows over here on the right. So we're managing a little bit of a new world, and the IT tools and technologies and our security perspective have to come along with that. So just kind of setting that as a backdrop, I put up these pretty pie charts, not for the purpose of you writing down, what's the latest threats, but instead it's to help you open up your mind to the fact that if you have a security mindset that I'm going to protect my servers, then that's great because you are protecting a good portion of where network threats actually occur, 11%. Okay. Or if you want to look another route, you can look at it, I'm going to protect from the bad guys outside my organization, okay? Or I'm going to protect from things like that. Unauthorized disclosures and theft or hacking might be inappropriate methods for you to focus your eyes on because it's just as common for you to, from an email perspective, who's ever sent an email accidentally to the wrong Joe Smith? Come on, raise your hands authoritatively. You know you have. Maybe it wasn't Joe Smith, but we've all sent to the wrong people accidentally, and we're all thankful, or maybe we're not in the room, that it didn't contain a spreadsheet with a bunch of customer information on it. Oh my goodness. Had that gone out, had I hit send on that one, that would have been pretty bad. So unauthorized disclosures or even disclosures, accidental disclosures, they're all things that we need to protect again, possibly just as much as outside threats. So this was actually a summary of events that occurred with Health and Human Services for the entire year of 2016. So pretty good data here with regards to breaches that were reported, where they occurred, and what they were. Okay? It's very difficult. It's a broad world at this point. So do we throw up our hands and say no? No. The other thing that's sort of happening in the world right now is there's some transitions to cloud. Yay, thank goodness I get to get this stuff out of here and I get someone else to manage it. Good. Does that wipe your hands clear of security needs and obligations with regards to that? Absolutely not. Okay. You might point out either as you go farther to the right, You're going to like software as a service. So you might think like Office 365. You might think Salesforce. You could think anything you'd like that's just sort of turnkey. Great. They're responsible for a lot of the lower layers. You don't have a physical server on-prem for things like that. You don't have responsibilities maybe even for some parts of the user authentication process. But you still have capability to worry about the data that's contained within there, right? The data classification and accountability, the client and endpoints and where that data is traveling to and who's manipulating that data and where that data could travel beyond the boundaries, you still have responsibilities. Obviously, for on-prem situations, you've got all the responsibilities. So you're shifting some responsibility, but not all. And I guess this is what's becoming known as the shared responsibility model. And you'll have to work with your vendors du jour to figure out what your responsibilities are and what their responsibilities are. So it's muddied the waters, and it's shifted some responsibilities. That's what that's done. But by no means has the cloud shift made things any. It's made some things easier, but some things where you need to be a little bit more knowledgeable. And the last slide to sort of set the table here is this is a summary slide from a Deloitte study regarding breaches that had occurred. They looked back, and if we look at breaches that had occurred back in 2016, what we decided to do to kind of graphically represent this is they looked at all the costs with regards to a breach. How many people have read in the paper about a customer disclosure of data? Okay. And then usually you read associated with that what? What do you see usually that the company does to protect their customers? Sorry, Home Depot, we leaked all your customer data, and we'll give you a free credit report for a year. It's free for you. It costs them some money, right? And it costs them, that's part of the public relations part. They'll hire a public relations person. They'll do a technical investigation to know exactly what occurred. They'll have, this breach notification. They'll send out letters to each person. Those letters cost $5, $6 per person to send. Okay, 1 million people just got disclosed, right? There's some significant cost to that. This entire area up here, attorneys, all the stuff that's going to happen initially, that's all what we call the above the surface costs. Anyone want to take an estimate as to how much that cost is as a percentage compared to beneath the surface? 20%. Seems expensive. 20%? 11% is what they're finding in the study. Okay? All those costs to do these things, they all seem expensive because they're immediate, they're pocket out of cash. They're nothing compared to the reputational damage you may have just suffered in the industry. Okay? Has anyone checked Target's price recently? Year and a half. Okay? It's been stuck at the price pre-Christmas when they had the breach. Okay? Market capitalization $33 billion, was $64. Okay? Hasn't recovered. The market went up 37% last year. They didn't. Okay? Costs of that, costs of raising debt. Okay? Loss of employees, who wants to work for organizations that have lost, contract revenue when you're trying to renew, things of that nature, customer faith. So a lot of things that kind of sidetrack your business. Okay, so really the offset is against, partially both beneath the surface costs as well as above the surface costs. Difficult to quantify, and I think some of our speakers will talk to some of the costs of these customer records and things that we're chartered to protect. But it's kind of against this backdrop that I just wanted to point out some, point the scene. Joe, our next speaker, is going to talk a little bit about frameworks and how to organize our discussion. But up here is a simple framework that we leverage in the industry often. This is called NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Okay, and what it does best is articulate all the things that we need to be thinking about with regards to security, at least in 5 easy-to-understand buckets. Okay, identify is simply the area of trying to find out what assets you have. Anyone has ever run a risk assessment or trying to look at things called data significance, that's an area of interest. Protection. This is probably what we think of most when you think of security. Okay? You think of your firewalls, you think of your antivirus, you think of any measure you might be taking nowadays to protect your data, and that's your security bucket. But equally, I'd say that knowledge as to whether you've had a problem or not is occurring to your consoles. Okay? Are you responding? Are you able to get notifications about when things are having problems? You have a firewall. Are you managing the firewall and taking a look at the alerts and events that are occurring? Are you mixing that in with intelligence to determine if something has occurred in terms of the latest? Responding. Great. Things are occurring to your console. What are you doing about it? What's your reactive mechanism to respond and proactively put out those threats and then recover from that? Has anyone in here successfully said, yes, I've recovered from a ransomware at some point on some device somewhere? Perfect. We've got a few. And I'm going to multiply that by 5 because the FBI says that only 20% of people report ransomware when they have it. So I'll just take times the number of people times 5 in here, and that'll be your ransomware response. But recovery and the ability to kind of get back to normal is really a part of business. This area, detection, response, and recover, is the new aspect of security. We've been focused on protection for so long. And we keep thinking that we're going to be able to protect. I hope that when you leave here today, that some of our speakers are able to show you that it's a difficult thing to protect against everything. Okay? It's even a difficult thing to protect against simple things. So we want to leave you with the idea that all of these areas and buckets are important, and that budgets and concerns should be kind of considered along all 3 of those areas for full data protection. Equally, we put together a circle to kind of discuss and frame our security conversations. This circle, besides making us a little dizzy here in the beginning, is meant to justify 3 sort of areas and approaches people have for security. One is sort of in the governance space. So if you have a compliance mandate or if you believe strongly in frameworks, which I believe strongly is a great idea, it can help you articulate what your security strategy is against one of these frameworks or compliance standards. Okay? And a lot of the things that come out of there, things like risk assessments or data classification, strategy, education, all of those are areas and part of that data governance. Where a lot of organizations have been is in the control space. We chat with a lot of organizations and we're like, well, we need the next latest generation firewall, and we need to, I'm worried about this vendor versus this vendor for antivirus or anti-malware. All of these things are important, but if your mindset is strictly in a technical controls world, then you're just going at things from a controls perspective, and you might miss some of the greater picture. And sort of a last approach is to look at things from your data out. Okay, if you look at the value of your data and you're able to judge the value of your data, you know how to budget and you know where to prioritize your security efforts. So all of these things being important, you'll also see as part of the sort of the key there, identity is a big portion of things, and one of our speakers will be talking a lot about the identity and how identity crosses across all streams and is a primary risk factor with regards to data. So on the data perspective, if you're thinking about your data, and next slide we'll just kind of walk through some examples of where data exists, but there's three primary concerns about your data: availability, integrity, and the confidentiality of it. Most people think primarily, I know that one organization actually within this room didn't really have as much concern about the confidentiality of their data. It was mostly about availability. We've got 500 workers, and if they're not able to get to their data, we're unproductive for a day or 2 or a week. And that's unacceptable to us, unacceptable to our business. So availability might be a primary concern for some sorts of data. Others might be, this is our super secret sauce, or this is information that we're chartered to protect. And so confidentiality is certainly very important. Some organizations worry significantly about integrity. We've got some people in the room that work for organizations that do nothing but make sure that data didn't get modified, especially important in the financial world and so forth. So all of those elements are just kind of critical background elements as we speak about data. From a data perspective, and this will be just kind of we'll just go around the room if we have some examples. Here's some examples and classifications of data that people might have in their room. Obviously, things like that you're chartered to protect, compliance, and protected data is sort of well known. The state of Illinois has specific rules as to what is sensitive information. That's dictated typically by an account number or driver's license number or social security, along with enough information about the person to discern who it is. It could be an initial and a last name. Okay? And this is all well defined within regards to Illinois statutes, but that's the data I think a lot of people think of. But other data that you might not think about as regularly, but I think equally as important, how many people have an HR department? Okay, that was just to kind of make sure everyone's still with me. HR department, so you've got all this payroll data, you've got health records, and I'm sure you have some ex-employees. So you have ex-employee data. Okay? That's all equally protected and chartered information. That would be great to get at. Research and development departments. Financials, okay? Past, present, and future forecast financial information is very good information to have on an organization. Okay? IT information. Anyone have a list of passwords, IPs, network diagrams, good stuff? Okay. Operational data and sales data. Okay. All of this data, we're not experts in the room to the point on data yet. It would be, oftentimes it's an organizational approach to determine what is your prioritized data from an availability and confidentiality perspective. So it's with this backdrop of, with regards to data, that a couple actionable areas from our perspective is obviously just getting educated. So I applaud your efforts to get here. Our goal is to educate and provide you some value. We have an ebook that summarizes a lot of our thoughts with regards to security. You're welcome to download that. I'm going to move too quickly, but do have a QR code to make that easier, but it's right off our website. We have blogs. We socially post once a day. We do 3 blogs a week, typically on topics like this, such as modern authentication or how to prepare ransomware. We had a ransomware guide that we have out there with an 8-part blog series, how to use SharePoint effectively, things of this nature. So we're putting content out there. We're hoping to educate and kind of bring the market along with us. And we're getting a lot of good response and trying to be some thought leaders in this space.